How many Chinese are there in the world? We give you 30 seconds to think about it. But it is better not to even try because no one has understood this question for 50 years. China, it is better not to raise this topic under any pretext. It is considered exclusively Chinese issues. But even in the United States, the situation will not become clearer. Because on the one hand, there is an Act on Relations with Taiwan in 1979 and the Act on Strengthening Relations with Taiwan in 2020, as if the Americans believe that there are two Chinas, but not only a visit but even calls of American officials in Taiwan is extremely rare. American corporations. Make yourself comfortable, friends. All the answers in the next couple of minutes. Usually videos about this topic suggest going back to 1949, but we'll dig a little deeper and start in 8000 BC at the end of the Stone Age, better known as the Neolithic plus or minus what is now the province of China. Minus on the territory of the modern Chinese province of Fujian lives, the so-called Austronesians, and the group got its name from the language, and the guys for their times were quite advanced. It is believed that they were among the first on the planet, invented the technology of sails and a primitive analog of paper. They also had a primitive analog of paper, were engaged in Austronesians, mainly in agriculture in which they achieved success, but closer to the 5th millennium BC. The guys fell under the pressure of more numerous, strongly Tibetan peoples, or as they are also called, Tibetan Chinese. This led to a migration that will go down in history as the expansion of Australians. First of all, as part of the expansion, the ancient people left eastern China for Taiwan, which was familiar to me because the first settlements of Austronesians on the island date back as far as 8,000 years BC. Well, and then thanks to technological advancements, settled Austronesians all over the ocean. Their descendants can be found in Indonesia, in the Philippines, in Polynesia, and even in Madagascar for us. It is Taiwan that is important. There, and in the page became the ancestors of the Aborigines of the island. According to the data for 2020, more than 500,000 Taiwanese are considered direct descendants of prehistoric Austronesians. Up to the beginning of our era, China did not care much about the island, but the Taiwan Strait and the geography of the island could not go unnoticed, and already in the 3rd century, Taiwan is mentioned in Chinese chronicles as an island of barbarians. In 239th year, mainland China sent 10,000 expeditionary corps to the island. 605 repeated the operation and brought back to the mainland natives who were taught Chinese and used in negotiations. Reliable information from those times is not much, but it is known that in the 7th century on the Penghu Islands in Taiwan were already villages founded by the mainland Chinese and Japanese, and since then, the inexorable process of displacing the Aborigines of Taiwan closer to the mountains has started, while the most suitable lands were occupied by mainland Chinese. It is the descendants of immigrants from Fujian and Guangdong provinces who make up the majority of the population of modern Taiwan. Although, before that, they, like most of the planet, had to suffer because of European colonizers in 1517. They sailed past the island, the Portuguese, who gave it the name Formosa, which translates as beautiful, but the Dutch from the East India Company did not keep themselves waiting, in China fell out of control of the islands, for which they fought the Spaniards and the Dutch won. But their full control of the island lasted only 20 years. Nevertheless, during this time, they managed to remain in the history of Taiwan. It was the Dutch who helped Chinese migrants oust local Aborigines, and it was they who taught the Taiwanese how to use cattle to work in the fields, as well as various fertilizers. And as the cherry on the cake, the Dutch left after themselves educated Aborigines. Who can write? But you should not be particularly deluded. As in the case of other colonies, Europeans were mainly interested in profit, so revolts were commonplace. As a result of one of them, in 1662, Taiwan was taken away by representatives of the Ming Dynasty. By the way, this is the earliest case in history when a colony was completely squeezed out of Europeans, and the first documented case when Taiwan was declared an independent state. Its Ming Dynasty on the mainland was replaced by the Qing Dynasty, the generals and residents who fled from it founded the Dunnan state on the island, which in Europe was called the former kingdom. She did not live long already in 1683. The Manchus of the Qing Dynasty, through the Dutch and sanctions, regained control of Taiwan. From then until 1895, the island was under full control of mainland China, although there were nuances here. Firstly, in the Qin Empire, Taiwan was not taken seriously, considering it to be the backyard of China. Secondly, a significant part of the island's population remembered the traditions of the Ming Empire and resisted the guys from Qin, who were considered invaders. And thirdly, in the 19th century, the Opium Wars began. Great Britain did not like China's independence, that he did not really want to trade its opium. The country put together a coalition and smartly defeated the troops of the Qin Dynasty, starting a famine in the country, devastation, and drug addiction. And Taiwan was seen by Western powers as an excellent springboard for conducting military and political actions against China. The island's trade with Europe and Japan grew significantly, and when China came to its senses, it was already too late. Nevertheless, the attempts were good. In 1885, Taiwan received the status of a full-fledged province, and the efforts of the Chinese government built the first railway there, repaired the party and infrastructure. This period is warmly remembered even by the modern authorities of Taiwan. Then the story would continue. We won't find out, because in 1884, China and Japan went to war. Japan won and, with the support of the West, took Taiwan, even though China did not recognize the terms of the treaty for the Japanese. The island was the first test of the pen in colonial affairs, and in just a couple of decades, Taiwan became the most advanced territory in Southeast Asia. With the exception of Japan itself in 1895, there were 50 kilometers of railways on the island. After 10 years, Taiwan was electrified under the leadership of the Japanese. They brought new agricultural technologies, and by the First World War, it was a world-class economy. It was like this until the Second World War. However, it is worth noting that the Japanese ruled the island as severely as possible. There were even elections where the governor-general was chosen from the locals to manage the thawing. Nevertheless, before the Second World War, Japanese militarism took its toll. Taiwan began to assimilate and even call for in the army on the side of Japan. You probably know how it ended. We will only add that many residents of Taiwan participated on the side of Japan in the Nanjing Massacre and other war crimes, but most still liked it before returning to China following the results of World War I. Although it cost me no incidents at the Post-Ladies Conference, Japan seemed to be forced to abandon Taiwan, but sensible peace treaties were not formalized even before 1951. And even then, when signing documents in San Francisco, China was not even invited, and the country's rights to Taiwan were somehow secured by de facto suspending the issue of the islands. Nationality in the air. Disorder reigned not only in documents and treaties. Since 1927, a civil war was raging in China. The Republic of China and the Chinese Communists shared territories and were a platform for the confrontation of the great powers even before World War II. For example, Germany supported the Republic in the 30s, and of course the Communists of the USSR because of the war with Japan and the subsequent World War. The Chinese had no time for internal strife during the war, but as soon as the situation got better, the old disagreements returned. The Communists and Republicans, in the very first second after the surrender of Japan, began convulsively taking cities and practicing who would seize more territory to declare the legitimacy of their government. Mao Zedong won the Civil War together with the Communists, and Chiang Kai-shek and the Kuomintang evacuated to Taiwan, where since 1949, de facto dictatorship was established. The first thing Chiang Kai-shek proclaimed the creation of the Republic of China on the island, and the second one imposed martial law. It lasted for a long 38 years and is considered the longest in history. Martial law went down in history under the name White Terror, within which many thousands of Taiwanese became victims of arrests, torture, and executions on suspicion of cooperation with the Communist Party of mainland China. Total censorship was imposed on the island, strikes were banned, and defensive lines Taiwan was actively increased. In the second half of the 20th century, there were several active phases of confrontation in 1955. In the 58th and 95 years, by a miracle, the full-scale wars of the PRC in Taiwan did not begin. The United States always played a decisive role in the events immediately after World War I. American specialists were engaged in economic recovery and investment. Wolf. Ledizhinsky conducted an excellent agrarian reform that led to defeudalization and the establishment of market relations, labor-intensive industries that the United States carefully covered with its military power in 1979. An Act on Relations with Taiwan was adopted, implying direct military support for the island in the event of a military clash with the PRC at the UN. Initially, it was the representative of Taiwan who spoke from China. However, along with the formal support of the island, the great powers could not help but notice the growing potential of the PRC. Mainland China in 1971 took a place in the UN, becoming the only representative of the state. Taiwan has since tried to challenge this 24 times by submitting its own application. But time after time, under pressure from mainland China, the application was rejected. The rhetoric of the United States has also changed. Instead of unequivocal support for Taiwan, the so-called policy of strategic duality has entered into action. On the one hand, America and its satellites support the island state. There are informal embassies and bodies of Taiwan in almost all Western countries. But on the other hand, no one formally recognizes them, and the United States officially recognizes the People's Republic of China as the only legitimate representative of the people of China. This gives rise to incidents like the fact that in 2020, another act was adopted to strengthen relations with the United States from Taiwan. And on the other hand, the United States conducts all official negotiations with China, forbidding its corporations to even mention the independence of the island. Periodically, the situation fluctuates one way or the other, depending on the current relations between the United States and China. But the status quo established in the 80s plus or minus persists to this day. China adheres to the concept of a single, while Taiwan is striving for official independence. Someone in the world supports the position of some others, and some are sitting on two chairs trying to get their own what from China, what from Taiwan, and to receive. That is what. Taiwan's economy has been growing at one of the fastest rates in the world, and now it is a paradise of semiconductors, electronics industry, and even nuclear energy. Of course, mainland China is the main trading partner of the island, even though Taiwan does not de facto pay taxes or contributions to the treasury of the People's Republic of China, and the turnover of mutual trade is only growing from year to year. Along the way, the democratization of society on the island is growing from year to year. In 1987, martial law was abolished at the end. In the 96th year, direct presidential elections were held, and by the beginning of the 90s, the positions of the Kuomintang, which has been governing the island for half a century, had weakened at the moment. Tensions in the region are growing again, and the explanation of the current situation is already politics. Our business is history, and the story of two Chinese who seem to be united. But it seems not. We told you, if you liked the video, we will be glad to like and comments on this topic. Well, until we meet again, friends.